BluecatsCollegeScouts.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, our daily look at an area football team and the key questions we're going to be answering about that team in our August 21st Big Country preseason football preview here at Big Country Preps. I'm with my partner, Dan Youngblood, and tonight, Dan, we are talking about the Coleman Bluecats.
Yeah, and this is a Coleman program that's had a lot of success the last couple of years. Went 9-3 last year, and bring a good group back. They got 15 of their 21 lettermen back. The issue there is that all 6 of those guys they've lost were two-way starters for them, so just 5 starters back on both sides of the ball. So they are going to have some questions to answer, and we're gonna talk about some of those here in a few minutes. But I'm excited to see what Coach Elder can do with this group. He did a remarkable job of turning this program around through its last rebuilding period. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep that train rolling this year.
All right, before we get into tonight's show, we want to remind you YouTubers to please hit the subscribe button. Also, hit that little bell so that you'll get notifications each and every time that Big Country Preps comes up with a new video. Also, we'd like to thank a couple of our sponsors, beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of KLAX 93.5 FM out of Brackenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, give Rob a shot at 254-559-2266. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. That is Rob Durham up at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge.
And with that, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about these Coleman Bluecats a little bit and just start with some of the questions that they're going to be facing in this 2024 season. One of the big ones, I think, and I mentioned this, is they do have a good group back, like I said, 15 lettermen, but they did lose some heavy hitters, some guys that were big-time contributors for them for multiple seasons. Guys like Brent Bolden, Jaden Jackson, Hunter Lackey, some guys that were, big-time players for them. Blaze Ronick, and some guys that really did some nice things for them on the field. You're talking about guys that they're going to have to find replacements for. Now, that I think is the big question: is can they find can they fill those holes with guys that are already in their program that are ready to step up and make that type of contribution? I think that's going to be a big key if they're going to have type of had the past couple of years and continue doing what they've done. I think they're going to have to find some kids and have some kids emerge and fill some of those roles.
One of the questions I would have, it's basically the same area. I mean, they got the 7-3 JV team from last year. There's plenty of holes to fill. So how much talent can they draw up from that JV team, that young influx of talent, to really have an impact, especially with the schedule that they're running this year, which we'll touch on in a bit. One thing that they're not the smallest team on the block, but they're not huge either. I wouldn't list size as a strength or a weakness. It's one of those things that will they get the footwork? And will they get some kids from JV to help up front so it won't be a weakness?
One thing I think that Coleman does have going for it is the continuity with what Coach Elder has done there. Like I said, coaching them through that rebuilding period, getting them through that to a really high level play the last 3 or 4 years. And then like you said, they've had success at the sub-varsity level, so you expect that to carry over. So they've got a lot of things going for them in terms of expectations. This is a program that expects to compete, expects to win. The one thing they're going to have to find this year, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what we've just been talking about, is they've got to find some playmakers. This is a team that has lost some guys that have done a lot of big things for them with the football in their hands. They're going to have to find some guys to replace those. One good key is they do have Braden Torres back at the quarterback position as a junior, who got a ton of experience last year as a sophomore and really emerged as a kid that I think that they can lean on to be a leader on offense. But they're going to have to find some guys around him to run the football, to catch the football. Some guys that haven't done just a whole lot of that. I mean, Torres is their leading returning rusher with just over 400 yards last year, 9 touchdowns on the ground. And then their leading receiver is Kellen Sykes, who had just 6 catches for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he showed some big playability, but they're going to need some guys to kind of be those consistent, dependable guys catching the football. And I'm just excited to see who emerges into those roles. I think you're going to see some of those JV call-ups and some of these guys on the varsity level who have been there that are going to be asked to do a little bit more. And I'm just excited to see what that looks like this year.
We're going to find out how good they are very early. If we're going to take a look at the schedule for Coleman in 2024, we'll start with the non-district portion. And I tell you what, this is the price of being good when you're successful. A lot of people aren't real eager to play you. And I think Coleman's schedule sort of reflects that. They've got one toughie after another in non-district. They will open with a road date against an improved Eastland team on August 30th. They will host Clifton on September the 6th. They will travel to, area power Mason. That's going to be a very tough game. September 13th, they will host Cisco. We all know about Cisco. They'll be hosting them on September 20th. And then they'll face Collinsville, another toughie that went several rounds deep in the playoffs last year on September the 28th. So that's one challenge after another in non district. They'll have an open date on October 4th prior to jumping into district. And by that point, Dan, we're going to know pretty much what they bring to the table this year with that schedule.
And the one good thing is, yeah, I agree. That's going to be a very, very tough non-district schedule. The one good thing is wins and losses through that schedule won't matter as much as staying and how well they stay healthy and what they gain from those games. But they do start district with a couple of tough ones right off the bat. October 11th at Hamilton, and they come home on October 18th to play DeLeon, which will both be big tests for them. And then they go to Hico on October 25th before rounding out district the first 2 weeks of November at Ballinger and at home against Bangs. So they've got a front-loaded district schedule. The one good thing for Coleman, and I'm sure they would agree, is they don't have Toller in that district anymore, and I'm sure they're excited to see that. That's a team they're probably glad not to have on their district schedule. But this is still going to be a challenging district, and their three toughest challenges, in my opinion, come right off the bat. So it's going to be interesting to see how they survive that district schedule, and then how they kind of navigate that early part of the district season.
All right. Game of the year. This one's kind of a tough pick, actually. What do you think is the game of the year for Coleman? We take a look at that with each team that we preview. How do you see it?
I'm going to go with that October 18th home game against De Leon because I think that one could potentially be the district championship game. But the one right before that against Hamilton, that's going to be a tough matchup too on the road. So and then at Hico, you got it sandwiched between two tough matchups. So, but I think that De Leon game is going to be a really fun one. De Leon's a program that has been doing nothing but getting better, and they've got a really good group back. And then Coleman's kind of been outside of Toller has kind of been the class of that district in recent years. So I think that that's going to be a big clash.
I'm going to go with because I see Coleman as an underdog against Hamilton and DeLeon this year, based on what Hamilton and DeLeon are bringing back. I think the most important game is going to be that road date at Hico on October the 25th because I view Coleman as clear favorites to beat Ballinger and Banks. Not to say that it's an automatic because it's not. Nothing's automatic. But that road date at Hico, I think, is going to be the most important one, the big determining factor of them moving up and grabbing a little higher seed. Certainly, Hamilton and DeLeon are games that Coleman could win, but I view them as underdogs in that. I think that Hico game might have the most significance when they look back at the regular season.
Yeah, and I think Hico is one of those teams that a lot of people don't think about as being as big a challenge as it actually will be. Hico made a big strides last year. That's a program on the rise and one that you've got to account for. So I think this is going to be a fun district. I think you've got four clear playoff favorites and then two teams in Ballinger and Bangs that are trying to fight into that mix.
Hico is no fun to play. No fun to play because you've got so few possessions to play against that team. One of the games I covered last year, I covered Hico in a game last year. An assistant coach from their opponent last year walked up to me and said, "God, I hate playing these guys
Yeah,
because you just don't get the football. I mean, they will kill the clock all night long, and you've got very little margin for error. It's no
yeah,
fun. So
and
I view that game against Hico is going to be that's going to be very important for
yeah,
Coleman.
yeah. And Coach Swearingen brings that physicality from Brock in his days there. That's a team that's going to hit you. So, but yeah, I like this Coleman schedule. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to follow this team. And those first 3 weeks of district, that to me that's going to tell the story. Those are three huge games right off the bat.
All right, with that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, the Coleman Bluecats. But before we do, we want to remind you that August 21st is the big night here at Big Country Preps. That's the night that we release our 2024 preseason football preview, covering all of the Big Country plus a few teams on the exterior of the Big Country. And as Dan will tell you, it was always the most extensive preview that you could get from any media source in the Big Country, but this year it's getting even bigger.
Yeah, our coverage area is growing this year. We are expanding our base 40 11-man schools to 45 with the addition of Mineral Wells, Glen Rose, Graham, Toller, and Miles. So we are super excited to add those 5 schools to the mix. We hope you are excited to follow our coverage of those schools throughout the school year. In the meantime, we appreciate you joining us for this episode of our Countdown to Two-A-Days series, and we hope you return tomorrow when we preview the DeLeon Bearcats here at BigCountryPreps.com.